I want you to picture a specific moment. It's late at night. The house is finally quiet. There are no more texts coming in, no more urgent emails to answer, and the tasks for the day are, technically done. It's just you and your body, and you are exhausted.
Right.
But it's not just physical tiredness. It's this heavy, sinking feeling that is really, really hard to name. Deep down, that you feel weak. But, and this is the kicker, you refuse to admit it. Not just to other people, but even to yourself. You just push it away.
That is a very specific and, I would argue, a completely universal silence.
Yeah.
It's the moment the performance drops, but the defense mechanisms are still, running on high.
Exactly. And looking through the stack of articles and psychological profiles we have for today, it's clear we don't hide this because we're ashamed. Exactly. We hide it because we're terrified.
Terrified.
We have this irrational fear that if we admit just for a second, I'm weak right now, the whole structure of our lives will just collapse.
It'll just fall apart.
We've been raised in this world that equates strong with just silent endurance.
The adult definition. To be an adult is to never complain and never stop.
Right. And usually when high performers, the kind of people listening to this, try to find a philosophy to help them maintain that pace, to keep that stiff upper lip, they almost always turn to Stoicism. It's the go-to operating system for the modern worker.
It is. And that is exactly where the problem begins. Because the version of Stoicism that lives on, say, social media is failing them.
We all know the stereotype, the bro stoicism, if you will.
Chill.
You scroll through Instagram or LinkedIn and you see the marble statue of Marcus Aurelius with a quote that basically says, "Be a rock, feel nothing, grind harder."
Precisely. Stoicism is anesthesia. But today we're going to completely dismantle that image.
Okay.
Because as we dug into these texts, looking at both the ancient philosophy and modern interpretations, we found this painful paradox at the heart of that popular interpretation. If Stoicism is about controlling your inner world, which is its core definition, how can you possibly control something that you refuse to even look at?
That's the friction point. If you refuse to look at your weakness, you aren't controlling it,
You're hiding from it.
you're hiding from it.
And you cannot domesticate a wild animal if you pretend it isn't in the room.
So our mission for this deep dive is to explore this argument that true Stoics aren't people who are never weak. They are simply people who never lie about their weakness. It sounds simple, but the implications are massive.
It changes the entire architecture of resilience.
Let's start with the root cause. Why are we so terrified of this feeling? I was reading through the psychological breakdown in our research packet, and it argues we don't actually fear the sensation of weakness itself.
No, the sensation is neutral.
The feeling is just a feeling.
It's the consequence. We fear being treated as weak. That is the root fear.
It's purely social.
It's deeper than social, it's evolutionary. Think about the environment our brains were built in. From the time we're children, we learn this implicit lesson. If you cry, you're told to hush. If you're tired, you're told to try harder. If you hesitate, you're told to man up.
Right.
The amygdala learns very, very quickly to associate the signal of weakness with the risk of being left behind.
Right, because in a tribe of 50 people on the savannah, if you're the weak link, you slow everyone down, you might get excluded.
And to the primitive brain, exclusion isn't just sad. Exclusion equals death. So fast forward to 2024. You're in a boardroom or a Zoom call. The stakes aren't life or death anymore, but your brain reacts as if they are.
And in the modern professional setting, weakness gets translated into
Incompetence.
incompetence, yeah. Or being a burden.
Being a burden, a nuisance.
Or a liability. I've seen this play out. Someone admits they're burned out and suddenly they aren't put on the key projects anymore. Not out of malice necessarily, but because the system flags them as unreliable.
Exactly. So the suppression mechanism kicks in. This is what psychologists call expressive suppression. We feel something, anxiety, doubt, sheer exhaustion. And the reflex isn't to examine it. The reflex is to shove it down immediately.
It's like hearing a rattle in your car engine and just turning up the radio so you don't hear it.
That is the perfect analogy. And studies show that this turning up the radio actually damages the engine more. There's research on emotional suppression that shows when you fight to hide an emotion, your physiological stress response, your blood pressure, your cortisol, it actually spikes higher than if you just express the emotion.
So you're doing double the work.
Double the work.
Yeah.
You're feeling the stress and you're doing the heavy lifting of hiding it.
And this brings us back to the Stoic rebuttal, because the texts we're looking at today highlight that true Stoicism distinguishes between control and self-deception.
Right.
turning up the radio doesn't fix the car. A true Stoic values autonomy above all else. And if you're lying to yourself about that rattle in the engine, you have lost your autonomy.
You're being driven by a hidden force. You are no longer the driver. You are a passenger to your own denial.
Wow, that turns the bro Stoicism idea on its head. By trying to be strong and ignoring the feeling, we actually become less in control.
Correct. The bro Stoic thinks, I feel nothing, therefore I am strong. The true Stoic thinks, I see exactly what I am feeling, therefore I can decide what to do with it.
Okay, let's dig deeper into how society gets this wrong. We touched on the statues and the quotes, but there's a mechanism of denial here that I found really concerning in the reading. It's the moralizing of weakness.
This is a huge cultural blind spot. We have a tendency, particularly in Western cultures, to turn a physical or biological state into a moral failure.
It's the Protestant work ethic on steroids, right? If I'm tired, I don't say my glucose is low, I say I am lazy.
Yes, or I lack willpower.
Yeah.
We treat a biological signal fatigue, doubt, sadness as a character flaw, a sin. And when you view weakness as a sin, you don't treat it with care. You treat it with punishment. You push harder. You deny rest. You essentially abuse yourself in the name of being good.
It reminds me of how we treat athletes versus office workers. If a runner breaks their leg, nobody says, you're lazy for not finishing the marathon. We say, go to the hospital.
Of course.
But if a knowledge worker's brain is fried from 80-hour weeks, we say, where's your grit?
That's a brilliant distinction. We respect physical limits because they're visible. We despise mental or emotional limits because we think they are negotiable. We think we can negotiate with biology.
But the source material is adamant. You cannot negotiate with reality. And trying to do so leads to what they call the existential cost.
Right.
It's not just that you're tired, it's that you become divided.
It creates a civil war inside the self. One part of you is screaming, I am at my limit, and the other part, the manager in your head, is screaming, shut up and get back to work. This destroys inner peace.
Of course.
You cannot have tranquility, which, remember, is the ultimate goal of Stoicism, ataraxia, if you are at war with your own reality.
And it erodes freedom, doesn't it? This was a big point in the notes. If you can't admit you're at your limit, you lose the freedom to stop.
That's the irony of the strongman archetype. We think admitting riftness makes us trapped, but denying it is the real trap.
How so?
If you cannot say, I am done, you are forced to continue destructive behaviors because stopping feels like losing. You lose the agency to make a rational choice about your own well-being. You become a slave to your own image.
There was another concept in the stack that really grabbed me, the idea of numbing. We tried to connect this to Brené Brown's work in previous deep dives, but this source takes it a step further. It says you can't selectively numb emotions.
No, the system doesn't work that way. It's a spectrum.
Yeah.
If you numb the low end, the weakness, the grief, the fatigue, you inevitably numb the high end.
The joy, the excitement.
The connection, all of it.
So life becomes flat.
Course is the word the source used. It becomes a long gray stretch of functioning. You're efficient, maybe you're hitting your KPIs, but you aren't really alive. You're just processing.
And I imagine this destroys relationships too, because if I'm pretending to be a rock and you're pretending to be a rock, we aren't connecting.
We're just bumping into each other.
Yeah.
We are exchanging resumes, not humanity. Real connection requires vulnerability, which is just another word for admitting where we are weak. Without that, relationships remain incredibly shallow. We are performing competent human at each other, but nobody is actually home.
And eventually, the body keeps the score. You can ignore the mind, but you can't ignore the stomach ulcers or the insomnia.
The body is part of nature. Stoicism is, at its core, about living in accordance with nature. Ignoring your body's scream for rest is, by definition, anti-stoic. It is irrational to think you can override your own biology.
So let's pivot a bit. If this is so damaging, why is the system set up this way? Why does the corporate world, the social world, prefer us to be silent about this?
Because the system values consistent function over honest humanity. It's the industrialization of emotion. A machine doesn't have off days. A machine doesn't need to process grief.
Right.
A person who admits weakness slows down the machine. They ask questions. They say, this pace is unsustainable. The system doesn't like that. It wants you to be predictable.
It creates this man of steel myth. We love those stories of people who never break. The Elon Musk sleeping on the factory floor.
We romanticize them, but we rarely hear the full story. This is survivorship bias. We don't see the divorce, the estrangement from children, the heart attack at 45, or the years of quiet desperation. We confuse discipline with blindness.
What's the difference?
Real discipline is staying true to reality. Forcing yourself to run on a broken leg isn't discipline. It's just blindness to the fact that your leg is broken.
There's also a contagion element, isn't there? If I'm in a high-pressure team and I admit I'm struggling, it scares you because you're barely holding it together, too.
Exactly. It's a collective silence, a house of cards. If one person breaks the illusion and says, "This is crazy, we can't work like this," it threatens everyone else's denial. It's easier if we all just agree to pretend everything is fine.
The conspiracy of silence. Okay, so we've established that hiding is bad, society pushes us to hide, and it's costing us our peace. But I want to play devil's advocate here. The source isn't suggesting we just walk into a board meeting and start weeping, right?
No.
There has to be a functional way to handle this.
Absolutely. And that is a crucial distinction. We are not advocating for unregulated complaining or, dumping your trauma on your colleagues. That isn't Stoic either. The source outlines a true Stoic strategy, and it's very structured.
Okay, walk us through it. What is step one?
Step one is private acknowledgement. It starts in the quiet of your own mind. You don't need to post it on social media. You just need to sit there and say silently, "I am weak right now," or "I am hurt right now."
That sounds deceptively simple.
It is, but it's radical. You aren't saying it to fix it immediately. You're saying it to see it. You're turning on the lights in the room so you can see the monster.
Okay, so once the lights are on, what's next? Because seeing it might just make me panic more.
That's where step two comes in. Distinguishing state versus identity. This is a linguistic shift.
This was the game changer for me in the reading.
It stops the spiral. You never say, "I am a weak person." That makes it your identity. It makes it permanent. It implies a defect in your soul.
Right.
Instead, you say, "I am weak in this specific area right now," or "I am tired today." You limit the scope.
So I am struggling with this project versus I am incompetent.
Exactly. By limiting the scope, you protect your self-worth. You are a capable person experiencing a moment of weakness. You're not weakness personified. This allows you to look at the problem objectively, like a mechanic looking at that car, rather than taking it as a personal failure.
That makes it manageable. It turns a crisis into a data point.
Precisely. And once it's a data point,
Wow.
you can move to step three, action over feeling. This is the most Stoic part of the strategy.
Because Stoicism is a philosophy of action, not just thinking.
Right. True Stoicism doesn't ask you to feel strong when you aren't. It asks you to act correctly given the reality. If you are weak, say you're physically exhausted, the correct action is not to sprint. The correct action is to slow down, to rest, to lower your standards temporarily.
But wait, isn't lowering standards failure?
Not if it's a strategic choice. If a general has a depleted army, the correct strategic move is to retreat and regroup, not to charge into a massacre. Resting is the rational response to the data your body is giving you. Ignoring the data would be irrational.
I love that framing. Resting isn't quitting, it's a strategic retreat. But there is a catch, right? The source warns us about the price of honesty.
Yes, we have to be realistic. If you stop performing superhuman strength, you will get less applause. You lose the hero badge of being the one who pulls the all-nighter, the one who never needs help.
People might even judge you.
They might think you've lost your edge.
And that stings. We are social creatures. We crave that validation.
We do. Which leads to the final strategy, control what matters. This goes back to the absolute core of Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, the dichotomy of control. You cannot control if others judge you for resting. You cannot control if your boss thinks you should be a robot. But you can control whether you judge yourself.
That's the hardest part.
It is. You have to decide what is more valuable to you.
Yeah.
The external applause for a performance that is killing you, or the internal peace of living in reality. You can't have both.
It's a heavy trade-off. But the source paints a picture of what happens if you commit to this. They call it the promised land. But it's not what people might expect. It's not a victory parade.
No. It isn't a land of eternal happiness or infinite energy. It's a place of quiet.
Quiet.
Think about how much energy you spend every day just holding up the shield, just masking the fatigue. When you drop the role, when you stop using all your energy to hide your humanity, you get that energy back. You no longer have to perform. You live in reality.
It's interesting, the final image the source gives us isn't a superhero standing on a mountain. It's just a person who is tired, knows they are tired, rests, and doesn't call it a failure.
And they don't need applause for it. They have peace. They have regained their autonomy because they're no longer being driven by the fear of being seen as weak. That is true invincibility.
Meaning what?
Not that you can't be hurt, but that you can't be broken by the fear of hurt.
It's a powerful shift. It changes the definition of strength from never breaking to always being true.
And that is the only strength that is actually sustainable over a lifetime.
We've unpacked a lot today. We've gone from the evolutionary fear of the late night silence through the industrialization of our emotions, all the way to a new practical strategy for dignity. But before we wrap up, I want to leave the listener with the provocative thought from the end of the research packet. It's a question that I think we should all sit with for a bit.
It's a question that cuts through the noise.
If tomorrow you no longer had to prove to anyone that you are strong, what is the first thing in your life you would change?
Just think about that. Would you sleep more? Would you quit that committee? Would you finally say, I don't know?
It's scary to answer, but I think the answer tells you exactly where you're currently lying to yourself.
Absolutely.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.